Hello, art parents. So we have a fun artist for February, Dmitri Prigov, who was an artist during the fall of communism in Russia, which you can imagine that's a pretty interesting life there. And also kind of interesting and fun for the kids to see is that he's a contemporary artist. And the contemporary artists are often a little bit less pleasing to the eye. They're a little bit more focused on their message than the aesthetic itself of their work, which is kind of fun to challenge the kids with. I always like to ask my art students, is this art? Why is this art? What do you think, is it okay that this is a table set with plates instead of, a beautiful painting of water lilies? What does this say to you? What does this make you feel? And really, that's what art is all about, is what it makes you feel. And that's kind of the fun of contemporary artists. It's a little less comfortable, is what I always say. Contemporary art is a little less comfortable. But this will be a fun one for this month, and I think the kids will really enjoy making the books. So as you read from the biography, Dmitri was born in 1940 in Moscow. So you can imagine, life really different, right? He was trained as an artist. He was trained as a sculptor and initially worked making sculptures for parks and actually did that throughout quite a good part of his career. He worked for the state, which obviously would be common in communist Russia. His father was an engineer. His mother was a pianist. There's actually not a whole lot available that talks about his early life or his youth. But he started writing poetry as a teen, and he considered himself first and foremost a philosopher and a poet. And as you can tell from the poem I tried to include one that was kind of accessible, but even at that, it's a little bit, everything's a little bit metaphysical with him. So read it to the kids. If they're, I would say, definitely 4th, 5th, 6th grade, you can talk about it a little bit and just see if they can kind of get a feel for it, but also just explain, a lot of poetry is it's fragments of ideas. It's not necessarily a complete story. It's like his work, like his images, it's meant to give you a feeling, give you an idea. And a lot of his work was really meant to challenge the communist government. He was an underground artist. He was briefly imprisoned in a mental hospital because the government didn't like his work. So it's kind of interesting, kind of an interesting guy. These are the books we're going to create. They're really fun, really interesting idea. You can kind of see, you can kind of get an idea for the shapes there. It's a fun thing. Here's a picture of Dmitri. He was a very quirky guy. 60s and 70s, that's a really quirky time in and of itself. Think about, you can remind the kids, Andy Warhol, and he was a really quirky guy. The 70s were really quirky, but really fun. There are a ton of videos of him online. He did not speak any English, so as I was watching videos on YouTube trying to get a better feel for him, just because there's not a whole lot written in his any of the biographies that I found. But there were a lot of videos online of him giving lectures, but they're all in Russian. He doesn't speak any English. So here's one of his poems that he cut into squares, and then you can see just like shifted the squares and stapled it together, glued, then stapled. Really a creative guy. And what he would do is kind of come up with this idea, the statement he wanted to make. He'd write his poetry, or he'd write what he wanted to write about it, and then he'd kind of develop the art around that idea. Instead of saying, I want to paint a picture of a beautiful summer afternoon on the lake, he would talk about an idea or something that he was passionate about, and then let the art evolve out of that. Here's another one of the books. I could not find, he's a little bit obscure, so I could not find, I was so curious. It looks like a beard to me, that's what I'm guessing, but maybe it's a leaf. But interesting. Either way, kind of fun. And let the kids guess. These are pictures that we took in the Centre Pompidou in France, and I could not find any pictures of them online, so I couldn't find any information about them other than what was on the tags. This one is one of his most famous pieces, and it's the one I give as an example here. You can see he really liked to use newspaper and paper. He felt like that really signified the fragility of humans, of our bodies, but he also liked that it was filled with text and filled with ideas. And then you can see how in the center he's painted really boldly this glasnost, which just means under Gorbachev, after the USSR fell, they instituted a policy of telling more information. So not as much information as we have, but more information, and just kind of his own statement on how he felt the people of Russia could handle this and what it would do to them. And, you know, there really aren't right answers, but I think it would be great with the older kids to go ahead and take a minute and mention that to them. Let them kind of take the idea and run with it. This year I don't get to teach any of the sixth graders, but last year I taught the sixth graders, and I loved the discussions we would have. They really have some great insights. It's really kind of fun. So here's another piece. And again, it's all highly symbolic. The 60s and 70s, that contemporary art, there was so much symbolism going on. And really, you find that throughout art. But it's just so blatant. And yet, at the same time, you've got the opportunity to decide for yourself what you feel like that means. And so go ahead and throw it out to the kids. What do you think? What does this make you feel? What do you think that Prigov was trying to say with this painting? And just kind of let them run with it. That's what's fantastic about art, is there are no right answers. You can interpret it any way you want. And so it's fun for them to see that and to get the chance to kind of look at that and see that. Not a lot of kids really get a chance to explore and kind of poke at art. Do you know what I mean? So I love to do it with my students, and I highly encourage you to do it as well. Okay, so we've got some white paper on the art cart. I've drawn an outline. I decided to do a little heart for this one. I'm going to put in just a little, it's like a little children's song that I like on this one. So you can see I kind of had a hard time like figuring out right where I wanted my heart to be, but I thought this was great for the kids to see, because if it's not working, just go ahead, don't erase, don't stress out about it. Just go ahead and get it to the shape you want, then throw this top page away. So we're just I've stacked up a bunch of sheets here. You can comfortably cut out 4, that's no problem for the younger grades. Older grades can handle, a bigger stack. Let them kind of experiment, but if they, especially for those younger kids, I mean, that's a lot of dexterity to push through that much paper. So just say, hey, grab 4, maybe 5 sheets, and then you can always just take that top sheet and set it, if you need a few more, and they don't have to be long, and set this top sheet on your next stack, trace, and then cut, and you can get that shape you want. And then, you can see I'm going to need to round this edge just a little bit, but kind of don't encourage them to do too much shaping because we don't want to make Mr. McMillan's life hard. And then I'm going to take this top page and just check it. Actually, I'm going to leave it on the art cart so that you can tell the kids that I took this top page and checked it. Or you're welcome to make your own book if you want. It's a teeny bit time consuming though, so we want to give the kids plenty of time. And then there's a bunch of cardstock on there. So I'm just going to set my pages and give them, I liked how Prigov gave it just a little border. So I'm going to give a little border around the edges, and I'm just going to trace around that heart and cut, and then I can just pick my side and staple, and then I can go ahead and write whatever messages I want in here, draw any little pictures. I'll put a couple of examples on the art cart for you, and like I say, this one I wanted to keep pretty simple, and then we'll try one that's a teeny bit more complex. Let them run with it. The more complex it is, obviously, the more difficult it's going to be to cut out. But I think it's great if they want to go for that, so don't discourage it necessarily. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here to help out with anything. And I hope you enjoy this and have a fun month in February. Don't forget, short month, so contact your teachers early to get a spot with them. Thanks.